Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back into a world where the line between the human soul and the animal spirit was much thinner than you might think. You are standing on a narrow path, the grass wet with dew, watching the morning mist curl around the legs of a wandering cow. You probably believe this era was just a time of lawless chaos and muddy fields. But in reality, the people of the Middle Ages were obsessed with the fine print of the law. They wanted order so badly that they were willing to give a seat in court to a creature that couldn't even say its own name. Before you get too comfortable and possibly fall asleep halfway through, tap like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this odd mix of boredom and history. It keeps the channel alive, and the stories just sleepy enough to help you drift off again next time. I would love to know where you are listening from tonight. Is it a quiet bedroom in a busy city, or a house tucked away in the countryside? Mention your location and the local time in the comments so we can all feel a little more connected in the quiet of the night. Now, dim the lights, let the world outside grow quiet, and turn on a fan if you like that soft, steady hum in the background. Let your shoulders loosen and your breathing slow. This is your time to drift. No rush, no deadlines, no noise. Just you, a little warmth in the air, and the faint whisper of history waiting to unfold. So, settle in, and let's ease gently into tonight's journey together. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, and the distant, sweet smell of wood smoke drifting from 100 small stone chimneys. You feel the weight of your heavy wool cloak pressing against your shoulders, a comforting burden that keeps the chill of the early morning at bay. Your leather boots make a soft, rhythmic squelch as you step through the thick mud of a narrow lane leading toward the village of Falaise. It is the year 1386, and the world feels much smaller and much larger all at once. There are no buzzing lights, no hum of electricity, and no digital clocks ticking away the seconds. Time here is measured by the position of the sun and the ringing of the church bells that echo softly across the rolling green hills of Normandy. The gray light of dawn is just beginning to filter through the heavy canopy of oak trees, casting long, dancing shadows across your path. You watch as a small bird hops along a fence post, completely unaware that it exists in a world where even a sparrow might find itself in legal trouble if it flies into the wrong window. As you walk, you notice the texture of the world around you is rough and honest. The stone walls of the village houses are uneven, covered in patches of pale green moss that feels like velvet under your fingertips. You pass a small stream where the water flows with a gentle, bubbling sound over smooth gray pebbles. The world is quiet, save for the occasional lowing of a cow in a nearby pasture or the soft rustle of wind through the dry leaves of autumn. You reach the edge of the village, where the mud gives way to uneven cobblestones that have been worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. It is a slow place, a place where people believe that the universe is a grand machine governed by rules that apply to every living thing, from the highest king to the smallest field mouse. You find yourself wondering how a society so focused on survival could find the time to organize a trial for a four-legged creature. It seems like a lot of paperwork for a world that has not even invented the ballpoint pen yet. You imagine the local scribe, his fingers stained with ink, carefully writing down the crimes of a sow while his own dinner gets cold. It is a strange thought, but as you move deeper into the heart of the village, the reality of this legal obsession becomes clearer. The village square is beginning to wake up. A woman in a linen headpiece is sweeping the steps of her home, her broom making a dry, rhythmic scratching sound against the stone. She looks at you with a tired but neutral expression, her eyes reflecting a life of hard work and simple faith. In this century, people do not see themselves as separate from nature. They are part of a great chain of being, and when that chain is broken, the law is the only tool they have to fix it. The architecture of the village is a mix of heavy timber and cold stone, designed to keep the heat in and the wolves out. You see the tall spire of the church rising above the thatched roofs, a constant reminder of the spiritual laws that govern the land. Historians still argue whether these proceedings were a form of cathartic theater for the community or a literal belief in animal agency. But as you stand here, it feels very real. You notice a group of men gathered near the town hall, their voices low and serious. They are not talking about the weather or the harvest. They are discussing the upcoming court date for a local animal that has caused a disturbance. It is not a joke to them. It is a matter of restoring the balance of the world. You feel a sense of calm curiosity as you watch them. There is no rush here. The law moves at the speed of a walking ox, and you are content to follow its slow pace. You take a seat on a low stone wall, feeling the cool moisture of the rock seep through your cloak. The sun is a pale yellow disk now, hanging low in the sky and washing everything in a soft, buttery light. You watch a black cat trot across the square with an air of immense self-importance. You wonder if the cat knows that in some parts of Europe, its cousins have been accused of being in league with dark forces. For now, this cat seems only interested in a patch of sunlight near the baker's door. The smell of baking bread begins to fill the air, a warm and yeasty aroma that makes you feel safe and grounded. It is a simple pleasure, the kind that anchors you to the present moment, even as you travel back through the centuries. In this era, the legal system is divided into two main branches. There are the secular courts, run by local lords and judges, and the ecclesiastical courts, run by the church. Secular courts usually handle the larger animals, like pigs, cows, and horses. These are the animals that can physically hurt someone or damage property in a significant way. The church courts handle the smaller things, the pests that arrive in swarms like locusts or rats. It is a highly organized system. You realize that if you were a medieval farmer, you wouldn't just be angry at a swarm of beetles. You would be looking for a lawyer to serve them with an eviction notice. It sounds like a lot of work, but to the people around you, it is the only way to make sense of a world that can often be cruel and unpredictable. The village square is now alive with the sounds of daily life. You hear the clink of a blacksmith's hammer in the distance, a steady and metallic beat that feels like the heartbeat of the town. You see a young boy leading a goat by a rope, the animal's hooves clicking softly against the stones. The boy looks serious, as if he is carrying a great responsibility. Perhaps he is. In a world where an animal's behavior can lead to a court case, every interaction with a beast is a legal minefield. You find a certain humor in the thought of a goat needing a character witness. But you keep it to yourself. The atmosphere is too peaceful for loud laughter. You prefer to just observe, letting the details of the scene wash over you like a warm bath. You notice a man dressed in a long, dark robe walking toward the town hall. He carries a bundle of parchment, tied with a leather string. This is likely a lawyer, one of the few men in town who can read and write the complex Latin of the legal codes. It is a quirky fact of history that animals were sometimes actually provided with legal counsel paid for by the village. These lawyers took their jobs very seriously. They would argue that a pig didn't know the law, or that a swarm of rats hadn't been given enough time to leave the premises before the trial started. You imagine a man in a dusty room, practicing his speech to a group of empty chairs, trying to find the best way to defend a creature that would rather eat the evidence than listen to his closing statement. The pace of life here is so different from what you are used to. There is no urgency to get anywhere. The clouds drift lazily across the sky, changing shapes as they go. One looks like a ship, another like a giant sleeping bear. You lean back against the stone wall and close your eyes for a moment, listening to the symphony of the village. The wind whispers through the eaves of the houses. A distant dog barks, a soft and muffled sound that doesn't disturb the peace. You feel the warmth of the sun on your face, a gentle touch that makes your eyelids feel heavy. This is a world of slow transitions. Nothing happens quickly. Even the law takes its time, winding through layers of tradition and ritual before reaching a conclusion. You open your eyes and see the local judge entering the square. He is an older man with a gray beard and a face lined with years of making difficult decisions. He moves with a slow, deliberate gait, his heavy robes rustling against his legs. He doesn't look like a man who is about to do something strange. He looks like a man who is about to perform a solemn duty. To him, judging an animal is no different from judging a man. Both are subjects of the king and of God. Both must follow the rules of the community. You watch him disappear into the shadows of the courthouse, a building made of thick oak beams and white plaster. The door closes with a dull thud against the stone frame, leaving the square quiet once again. You think about the mainstream historical fact that medieval law was deeply rooted in the idea of a moral universe. People believed that if a crime was committed, even by an animal, the moral order was broken. A trial was a way to fix that break. It wasn't necessarily about punishing the animal for being evil, in the way a human might be, but about demonstrating that the law applied to everyone. It was a way for the community to feel like they had control over their environment. In a time when a bad harvest or a sudden plague could wipe out a village, the law was a comforting structure. It provided a set of steps to follow, a way to move from chaos back to order. As you sit there, you notice a small group of children playing near a well. They are laughing softly, their voices sounding like small bells in the cool air. They are playing a game with stones and sticks, completely unbothered by the serious legal matters happening just a few yards away. Their innocence is a nice contrast to the weight of the law. You realize that even in a world where pigs are put on trial, children still play and the sun still rises. The strangeness of the history doesn't take away from the humanity of the people. They are just trying to get by, using the tools they have. The mud in the square is starting to dry as the morning progresses, turning from a dark, wet brown to a lighter, dusty tan. You decide to stand up and stretch your legs, feeling the blood flow back into your feet. The wool of your cloak is warm and slightly scratchy against your neck. You walk toward the courthouse, curious to see what the interior looks like. The air inside is cooler and smells of old paper, beeswax candles, and the faint, earthy scent of the rushes that cover the floor. The light is dim, filtered through small, leaded glass windows that are thick with dust. It is a space that feels heavy with the weight of history. You see rows of wooden benches, their surfaces carved with the initials of people who sat there long ago. At the front of the room is a large wooden desk for the judge. There is no witness stand as you know it, just a space where people stand to tell their stories. You can almost feel the presence of the hundreds of trials that have taken place here. Most were probably about land disputes or stolen chickens. But every now and then, the defendant was the chicken itself. You find a spot in the back and sit down, the wood of the bench feeling hard and solid beneath you. The silence in the room is profound. The kind of silence that makes you want to hold your breath. You think about the logistics of these trials. How do you bring a pig into a courtroom? Do you put it in a crate or lead it by a rope? Does it have to stay still while the charges are read? You imagine the scene, the judge in his finery, the lawyer with his scrolls, and a large, confused soul blinking in the candlelight. It is a surreal image, yet it happened. These were not rare events. They occurred all across Europe for hundreds of years. It was a standard part of the legal landscape. You find yourself drifting into a state of quiet reflection, marveling at the capacity of the human mind to create such elaborate systems for such unusual situations. The light in the courtroom shifts as a cloud passes over the sun, casting the room into a deeper gray. You watch the dust motes dancing in a single beam of light that cuts through the darkness. They twirl and spin in the air, moving with a grace that seems almost magical. You feel your breathing slow down, matching the rhythm of the quiet room. There is no need to rush. The story is just beginning to unfold, and you are right where you need to be. You are a silent observer in a world that is long gone, yet feels remarkably close in the stillness of the morning. You recall another quirky fact: animals were sometimes kept in the same prisons as humans while awaiting trial. The jailers didn't distinguish between a human thief and a thieving cow. They both occupied a cell, and the jailers expected payment for the animal's food, just as they did for the humans. It makes you wonder what the conversations were like in those cells. Of course, there was no talking, just the sound of straw rustling and the occasional sigh from a prisoner, whether two-legged or four. It is a detail that adds a layer of strange reality to the whole concept. The law didn't just stop at the courtroom door. It followed the animal into the dungeon. As you sit in the courthouse, you feel the tension of the village start to seep into the room. It is not a violent tension, but a quiet, expectant one. People are starting to filter in, taking their seats on the benches with a soft murmur of conversation. They move slowly, their movements softened by the heavy layers of their clothing. The air grows warmer as the room fills up, the scent of damp wool and wood smoke becoming more pronounced. You feel a sense of community here. These people are all bound together by the same rules, the same fears, and the same hopes. They are here to witness the law in action, to see that justice is done, even if the defendant doesn't understand the concept. The judge returns to his seat, and the room falls instantly silent. You can hear the scratch of a quill on parchment as the clerk prepares to record the day's events. The sound is rhythmic and soothing, like the ticking of a very old clock. The judge clears his throat, a dry sound that echoes in the stillness. He begins to speak in a low, resonant voice, the words flowing in a language that sounds like music, even if the specific meanings are lost to time. You don't need to understand the words to feel the weight of them. This is the voice of authority, the voice that keeps the mud from swallowing the village and the wolves from the door. You lean your head back against the cool stone wall behind the bench, letting the sound of the judge's voice wash over you. It is a comforting sound, a steady hum that anchors you to the scene. You feel your muscles begin to relax, one by one. Your shoulders drop, your hands rest loosely in your lap, and your feet feel heavy on the floor. The world outside the courthouse continues to move at its own slow pace, but inside, time seems to have stopped. You are floating in a moment of pure history, a moment where the strange and the mundane meet in a quiet courtroom in Normandy. You think about how far you have come this morning, from the muddy path in the woods to this seat in the heart of the village. It has been a journey of sensory details and quiet observations. You have felt the cold, smelled the bread, and heard the hammer of the blacksmith. You have seen the faces of the people and the texture of their lives. And now, you are ready to see the law in action. You are ready to see how a society handles the unexpected, the unusual, and the downright bizarre. The story of the animal trials is not just a story about animals. It is a story about us, about our need for order, and our desire to make sense of the world, no matter how much effort it takes. The judge gestures to the door, and you hear the heavy iron latch lift with a metallic clink. The sound is sharp in the quiet room, a signal that the first case is about to begin. You don't turn your head, but you feel the shift in the air as the defendant is brought in. The room seems to hold its breath. You are part of this now, a witness to a world where a pig can be a prisoner and a lawyer can be its only hope. The journey through the mud and the mist has led you here, to this quiet, candlelit room where history is about to unfold in the strangest of ways. You close your eyes for a brief second, savoring the stillness before the trial begins, feeling the slow, steady pulse of the medieval world beating in time with your own. The heavy oak door at the front of the chamber swings open with a slow, grinding sound that seems to echo the gravity of the moment. You watch, your breath held in the cool, still air, as a small procession enters the room. At the center of this group is the defendant. It is not a man in chains or a thief caught in the act, but a large, sturdy soul. She moves with a confused but steady gait, her hooves making a series of dull, rhythmic taps against the wooden floorboards. You notice something immediately that makes you blink in the dim candlelight. The pig is not just a pig. She has been dressed in the clothing of a human being. She wears a small, dark jacket made of coarse wool, tailored crudely to fit her stout frame. Below her belly, a pair of breeches has been fastened around her hind legs, and on her front trotters, someone has painstakingly tied a pair of tiny, white gloves. This sight would be comical if it were not for the absolute, crushing seriousness that fills the room. No one laughs. No one whispers a joke to their neighbor. The judge watches the animal with a look of profound concentration, his eyes following every twitch of her snout. To the people in this room, the clothing is not a costume for entertainment. It is a legal necessity. By dressing the animal in human clothes, they are visually bringing her into the world of human law. They are signaling to the community, and perhaps to the heavens, that this creature is being held to the same standard as any other citizen. You feel a strange shiver of realization as you watch her. In this moment, the pig is no longer just livestock. She is a legal person, standing before her peers to answer for her actions. The air in the courtroom seems to grow even heavier. You notice the scent of old tallow candles burning down, their yellow flames flickering in the slight draft from the doorway. The smell is thick and slightly sweet, mixing with the earthy aroma of the animal and the dry, papery scent of the legal scrolls. You adjust your position on the hard wooden bench, feeling the grain of the wood through your wool trousers. The silence is so deep that you can hear the soft, raspy sound of the pig's breathing. She seems remarkably calm, her small, intelligent eyes scanning the room, as if she is trying to understand why so many people have gathered to watch her. She stops near the judge's bench and lowers her head to sniff a stray piece of straw on the floor, an action so mundane that it stands in stark contrast to the formality of the scene. The court clerk begins to read the charges. His voice is a low, steady drone that fills the room, the Latin words rolling off his tongue like a slow, moving river. You don't need a translation to understand the weight of the accusations. This pig is being tried for a serious offense, one that has caused great pain to a local family. In the eyes of the law in 1386, an animal that takes a life or causes serious injury has committed a moral crime against the community. Mainstream history tells us that these trials were conducted with the exact same procedural rigor as those for human defendants. There were witnesses, there were investigations, and there was a formal verdict. This wasn't a mob with pitchforks. It was a society that believed deeply in the power of the written word and the structure of the court. You watch the judge as he listens. He leans his chin on a hand that looks like weathered parchment, his fingers tapping a slow beat against his cheek. He represents the king's justice, a force that is supposed to be as impartial as the sun. You find yourself thinking about the lawyer who has been assigned to the pig. He stands to the side, a man in a simple brown tunic, with a face that suggests he has spent many nights awake, worrying over the details of his cases. He does not look embarrassed to be defending a farm animal. In fact, he looks determined. He has a duty to ensure that even this sow receives a fair hearing. He might argue that the animal was provoked, or that she lacked the capacity for malice. He might even argue that the owner of the pig should be the one to blame, though in this specific legal tradition, the animal is often seen as an independent moral agent. The trial proceeds with a slow, methodical pace that makes your own heartbeat feel like it is slowing down. There is no shouting, no dramatic outbursts. Each witness comes forward and speaks in a quiet voice, their words punctuated by the soft scratching of the clerk's quill. You watch the dust motors dancing in the candlelight again, their tiny, swirling motions a mirror to the complex legal arguments being woven in the room. You feel a sense of profound stillness as if the world outside has truly ceased to exist. There are no cars, no phones, no flickering screens. There is only the judge, the lawyer, the witnesses, and the pig in her little wool jacket. It is a scene of immense, quiet beauty, even if the underlying reason for it is tragic. Historians still argue whether these trials were meant as a literal deterrent to other animals or a symbolic performance for the human public. As you sit there, you can see both sides. Perhaps a farmer watching this would be more careful with his own livestock, fearing the same legal trouble. Or perhaps the community just needed to see that the law could provide a resolution to a chaotic and painful event. It is a way of saying that even in the face of tragedy, there is a process. There is a way to make the world right again. You find yourself leaning toward the symbolic view. The clothing, the gloves, the formal reading of charges. These are all parts of a ritual designed to restore a sense of order to a village that has been shaken. You notice a small detail that catches your eye. The pig has a small, dark spot on her ear that twitches every time a fly lands near it. It is a reminder that despite the jacket and the breeches, she is still a creature of nature, governed by instincts that the law cannot fully grasp. Yet, the people in this room are trying to bridge that gap. They are trying to pull her into their world of logic and morality. You feel a wave of sleepy empathy for both the animal and the people. Everyone here is trying their best to navigate a world that is often confusing and harsh. The law is their lantern, and they are following it into the darkness, even if it leads them to a courtroom with a sow in a waistcoat. The afternoon sun begins to dip lower in the sky, and the light in the courtroom turns from a pale gray to a warm, glowing amber. The long shadows of the timber beams stretch across the floor, reaching toward the pig, as if they want to pull her into the earth. You feel the warmth of the room increasing as more candles are lit, their orange glow reflecting in the polished wood of the judge's desk. The atmosphere is cozy despite the solemnity. It is the kind of warmth that makes you want to pull your cloak tighter around you and close your eyes, letting the sounds of the trial carry you away. You can hear the distant sound of a bell ringing for the evening prayer, its tone soft and muffled by the thick stone walls of the courthouse. The lawyer for the pig stands up to make his final statement. He speaks slowly, his voice rising and falling like the tide. He points to the animal, who has now sat down on the rushes, looking remarkably like a tired child at the end of a long day. He talks about the nature of animals, the lack of human reason, and the mercy that the law should provide to all of God's creatures. You don't need to follow the intricate legal theory to feel the sincerity in his voice. He is doing his job with a dignity that is truly moving. He knows that his client cannot speak for herself, so he must be her voice. He must translate her silence into a language that the judge can understand. You think about a quirky tidbit. You once heard that in some trials, animals were actually acquitted if it could be proven that they were acting in self-defense or if they were of a particularly young age. There was a sense of nuance in these proceedings. They weren't just looking for an excuse to be cruel. They were looking for justice, however they defined it. You imagine the lawyer bringing in character witnesses for the pig. Other farmers who might say she was usually a gentle animal, or a neighbor who saw her being mistreated. It is a level of detail that makes the whole era feel incredibly human and relatable. We all want to be understood, and we all want the rules to be fair, even if those rules seem strange to someone looking back from 600 years in the future. The judge listens to the closing arguments with his eyes closed, his breathing slow and steady. For a moment, you wonder if he has fallen asleep, but then he opens his eyes and they are sharp and clear. He has heard everything. He takes a moment to look at the pig, who is now resting her snout on her front trotters, her little white gloves tucked underneath her. It is a picture of domestic peace in the middle of a legal storm. The contrast is striking, and it stays with you. You feel a deep sense of calm, the kind that comes from being in the presence of a tradition that has lasted for centuries. This is how things have always been done, and there is a comfort in that consistency. The light in the room continues to fade, and the corners of the courtroom are now lost in shadow. The only bright spot is the circle of candlelight around the judge and the defendant. It feels like a stage, a theater where the most important play in the world is being performed. You watch the judge pick up a small wooden mallet. He doesn't strike it yet. He just holds it, feeling its weight in his hand. The room is so quiet that you can hear the faint pop of a candle wick as it burns down. You feel your own body relaxing further into the bench, your muscles loose and heavy. The air is cool on your face but warm on your back, a perfect balance that makes you feel like you are floating. You reflect on the mainstream historical fact that these animal trials were a reflection of the lex talionis, the law of retaliation. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If an animal took a life, the law demanded a life in return. But the trial was the necessary middle step. You couldn't just take the life. You had to prove that the law required it. It was a way to prevent private feuds and to ensure that the power of life and death remained in the hands of the state and the church. It was about stability. You see the village square in your mind, the people waiting outside for the verdict, their lives dependent on the stability that the judge provides. They need to know that the rules work, even when the offender is a pig. The judge finally speaks, his voice a low rumble that seems to vibrate in your chest. He delivers his verdict with a gravity that leaves no room for doubt. The words are long and formal, full of references to ancient codes and religious texts. You watch the pig, who doesn't move. She remains in her peaceful position on the floor, her ears occasionally twitching at the sound of the judge's voice. She is the center of the world right now, yet she is the only one who doesn't know it. There is something profoundly peaceful about her ignorance. She doesn't have the burden of the law or the weight of morality. She just is. You find yourself envying her simple existence for a fleeting second before the reality of the situation returns. The sentence is pronounced, and it is a heavy one. In the case of the Falaise pig, the animal was sentenced to be mangled and then hanged in the village square. It sounds harsh to modern ears, but in the context of the time, it was a symbolic act of justice. The animal would be punished in the same way a human would be for the same crime. This was the ultimate expression of the idea that the law was universal. You feel a pang of sadness for the sow, but you also understand the logic of the people around you. They are not acting out of malice, but out of a deep-seated belief in the necessity of order. They are trying to heal a wound in the community. You watch as the guards approach the pig to lead her away. They move gently, with a surprising amount of respect. They don't poke or prod her. They simply guide her to her feet and lead her toward the door. Her little jacket and breeches are dusty now, and one of her white gloves has come loose, dangling from her trotter. She walks with the same steady gait as before, her hooves clicking on the wood one last time. The sound is final, a period at the end of a long and complex sentence. You watch her disappear into the shadows of the hallway, her small, dark shape fading until it is gone. The courtroom begins to empty, the people moving in a slow and silent stream toward the exit. They don't talk as they leave. They have witnessed something solemn, and they carry that weight with them. You stay in your seat for a few minutes longer, savoring the fading warmth of the room and the lingering scent of the candles. You feel a sense of completion, as if you have just finished a long and difficult journey. The story of the pig in human clothes is a strange one, but it is also a very human one. It is a story about how we try to make sense of the world, how we use the tools of the law to build a structure in the middle of a wilderness. You stand up slowly, your legs feeling a bit stiff from the long wait. You stretch your arms, feeling the pull of the wool in your cloak. The air in the courtroom is now quite cool, and you can see your breath in the dim light. You walk toward the door, your boots making a soft sound on the rushes. You pass the judge's bench and see a stray piece of parchment lying on the floor. It is covered in elegant, looping handwriting, the ink long since dried. It is a record of what happened here today, a small piece of history that will be tucked away in a dusty archive for centuries, until someone like you comes along to find it. As you step out of the courthouse and back into the village square, you find that the sun has set. The sky is a deep, velvety blue, and the first stars are beginning to twinkle overhead. The air is crisp and cold, making your skin tingle. The village is quiet, the only sound being the distant bark of a dog and the soft rustle of the wind in the trees. You see the light from the tavern windows, a warm and inviting yellow that spills out onto the cobblestones. You think about the pig, who is now in a cell somewhere, waiting for her final day. You think about the lawyer, who is probably at home now, sitting by a fire and reflecting on his defense. And you think about the judge, who has moved on to the next case on his list. The world feels very still and very old. You feel a deep connection to the people of the past, to their struggles and their strange, beautiful ideas. You realize that the history of the animal trials is not just a collection of odd facts. It is a mirror that reflects our own desire for justice and our own attempts to understand our place in the universe. You walk slowly toward the inn, your mind full of images of pigs in jackets and lawyers in robes. The mud of the village is now dark and cold under your feet, but you don't mind. You are part of the story now, a silent traveler in a world of mystery and law. You reach the door of the inn and pause for a moment, looking up at the moon. It is a silver sliver in the sky, casting a soft, ethereal light over the thatched roofs. You feel a sense of peace wash over you, a deep and satisfying tiredness. You have seen enough for one day. The story will continue tomorrow, but for now it is time to rest. You turn the iron handle of the door and step into the warmth, the smell of roasted meat and wood smoke welcoming you back to the present. You are ready to dream of a world where the law is a comforting blanket, and the animals are our silent, mysterious companions in the dance of life. The morning light filters through the narrow, arched windows of the local town hall, casting long, dusty beams across the floor. You feel the cool, crisp air of a new day on your skin, a sharp contrast to the warm, heavy atmosphere of the courtroom you left behind last night. Your boots click softly on the stone floor, a sound that feels magnified in the quiet of the early hour. You are here to witness a different kind of legal battle, one that doesn't involve a single animal in a jacket, but rather a whole community of invisible defendants. You find a seat on a smooth wooden bench near the back, feeling the cool grain of the timber against your palms. The room smells of old paper, dried ink, and the faint, sweet scent of stored grain that seems to cling to the walls. This is the heart of the legal world, for the smaller creatures of the earth, the ones that scurry in the shadows and feast on the hard-earned harvests of the villagers. You remember the pig from yesterday, her little white gloves and the heavy silence of her trial. That was a secular affair, a matter for the king's judges. But today, the atmosphere feels more spiritual, more connected to the mysteries of the natural world. The defendants are not present in the room, at least not in a way you can see. They are the rats that have been making their home in the local barns, eating through sacks of flour and leaving trails of destruction in their wake. To you, a rat problem might seem like a job for a cat or a bit of poison, but in this era, it is a matter for the highest legal minds. You watch as a man in a long, flowing robe enters the room, carrying a stack of parchment that looks heavy enough to crush a small animal. This is the defense lawyer, a man who has made a name for himself by representing the unrepresentable. He takes his place at a small table, his movements slow and deliberate. He reminds you of a scholar who has spent too many years in a library, his eyes slightly squinted from reading small text by candlelight. You imagine his office, filled with stacks of books on theology and law, and perhaps a few crumbs left out to keep his clients happy. It is a quirky fact of history that some of the greatest legal minds of the 16th century, such as Bartholomew Chassenet, built their reputations on defending pests. These lawyers didn't just stand up and give a speech. They used every trick in the legal book to protect their four-legged clients. You find a bit of humor in the thought of a man in a silk robe arguing that a group of rodents didn't receive their court summons because the delivery man was afraid of tails. If you think your own legal system is complicated, imagine trying to serve a subpoena to a mouse hole. The proceedings begin with a formality that feels almost like a religious ritual. The judge, an older man with a face like a dried apple, sits on a high dais, his robes pooling around him like a dark cloud. He listens as the charges are read aloud. Countless counts of theft, property damage, and general nuisance. The air in the room is still, save for the soft rustling of the lawyer's papers. You find yourself leaning forward, curious to hear how a human can defend a rat. The lawyer stands up, clears his throat with a dry, raspy sound, and begins to speak. His voice is rich and resonant, filling the room with the beautiful, rhythmic cadence of formal French. He doesn't start by denying the rats ate the grain. Instead, he starts with a technicality. He argues that the court summons was invalid because it was addressed to the rats as a general group, rather than to the individual rats residing in specific barns. He claims that the law requires every defendant to be properly identified and notified. You can't help but smile at the sheer audacity of the argument. It is a brilliant piece of legal maneuvering. Historians still argue whether these intricate defenses were a way for lawyers to practice their skills for more important human cases, or if they truly believed in the legal rights of all living things. As you watch the lawyer gesture toward the empty space where his clients should be, it feels like a bit of both. He is performing a service for the community, providing a way for them to address their problems through the slow, steady process of the law rather than through anger and chaos. The trial moves at a pace that makes the growth of a tree seem fast. Each point is debated with a level of detail that is both impressive and slightly exhausting. You feel a wave of sleepiness wash over you, the steady drone of the lawyer's voice acting like a lullaby. You let your head rest back against the stone wall, the cool surface a pleasant sensation against your scalp. You watch the dust motes dancing in the sunlight, their movements slow and unpredictable. They remind you of the rats themselves, moving through the world in ways humans can't quite control. The world outside the town hall continues to turn. Farmers are plowing their fields. Women are washing clothes in the stream, and children are playing in the mud. But in here, time is suspended. You think about the mainstream historical fact that these ecclesiastical trials often ended not with a death sentence, but with a formal curse or an order of excommunication. The church would literally tell the pests to leave the area within a certain number of days or face divine wrath. It sounds like a strange way to handle a pest problem, but it reflects a world where the spiritual and the physical were one and the same. To the people of this village, a curse from the bishop was as real and as powerful as a physical wall. They believed that the world was a moral place, and that if the rats were breaking the rules, the church had the power to set things right. It is a comforting thought, in a way. It suggests that there is an order to the universe, even when things feel like they are falling apart. The lawyer moves on to his next argument, and it is a masterpiece of logic. He states that even if the rats had received the summons, they couldn't possibly be expected to attend the trial. Why? Because the journey to the courthouse was too dangerous. The village is full of cats, he argues, and his clients have a well-founded fear for their lives. To ask them to travel through such hostile territory would be a violation of their rights to safe passage. You find yourself suppressed a chuckle. It is a classic legal delay tactic. The 16th century equivalent of claiming a flight was cancelled due to weather. The lawyer looks quite pleased with himself, his fingers interlaced over his stomach as he waits for the judge's reaction. The judge merely nods, his expression unchanged, as if he hears this kind of thing every day. The room is growing warmer as the sun rises higher in the sky. The smell of the grain seems to intensify, a dry and earthy aroma that makes you think of autumn harvests and warm kitchens. You notice a small crack in the floorboards near the front of the room. You imagine a tiny pair of eyes watching the proceedings from the darkness below. Does the rat know it has the best legal defense in the country? Probably not. It is likely more interested in the crumb of bread that fell from a clerk's lunch. There is something deeply ironic about the whole situation. the massive effort being put into a case where the defendants couldn't care less about the outcome. It is a human drama played out on a stage built for animals. You shift your weight on the bench, the wood creaking softly under you. You feel the weight of your wool cloak, its warmth a cozy embrace in the quiet room. You think about the quirky tidbit that these trials were sometimes funded by the very people whose grain was being eaten. The villagers would pool their money to pay for the lawyer and the court costs. It seems like a strange investment, but to them, it was worth every penny. They weren't just paying to get rid of the rats. They were paying for the peace of mind that comes from knowing the law is on your side. It was a way to turn a natural disaster into a legal dispute, something that could be managed and resolved. The lawyer is now talking about the natural rights of the rats. He argues that God created them and gave them the instinct to eat, so they cannot be blamed for following their nature. He suggests that if the villagers want the rats to stop eating the grain, they should provide them with an alternative food source. It is a remarkably modern-sounding argument, a plea for coexistence rather than extermination. You wonder if the lawyer actually likes rats, or if he just enjoys the challenge of the case. He speaks with such passion that it is hard to tell. His words flow together in a seamless stream of logic and rhetoric, a soothing sound that makes your eyelids feel even heavier. The afternoon light is golden now, filling the room with a soft, warm glow. You watch the shadows of the window frames crawl across the floor, measuring the passage of the day. The world feels very still, very peaceful. You are a long way from the noise and rush of the modern world. Here, the biggest problem is a group of rats, and the biggest solution is a well-worded legal brief. It is a simpler time, but also a more complex one in ways you are only just beginning to understand. You feel a deep sense of relaxation, as if the rhythm of the trial has synchronized with your own breathing. Each argument is a breath in, each pause a breath out. You reflect on the fact that these trials often lasted for weeks or even months. The legal system was not designed for speed. It was designed for thoroughness. Every voice had to be heard. Every precedent had to be checked. You imagine the lawyer walking home at night, his mind still buzzing with legal theories, passing the very barns he is defending in court. Does he look at the rats differently now? Does he see them as clients rather than pests? It is an interesting thought. The law has a way of changing how we see the world, of adding layers of meaning to the most mundane things. A rat is just a rat until it is a defendant. Then, it is a symbol of the tension between nature and civilization. The judge finally speaks, his voice a low, gravelly tone that cuts through the lawyer's rhetoric. He asks a question about the specific boundaries of the rat's territory, and the lawyer jumps back into the fray with a new set of maps and documents. You watch as they bend over a large sheet of parchment, their heads close together in the dim light. They look like two old friends solving a puzzle. There is no animosity here, only a shared commitment to the process. It is a beautiful sight in its own way. Two men using the power of their minds to solve a problem that most people would solve with a trap or a broom. As you sit in the quiet room, you feel a sense of connection to the people of the past. You understand their need for order, their desire to make sense of the world. You see yourself in the lawyer's determination and the judge's patience. We are all just trying to find our way through the mud and the mist, using whatever tools we have at our disposal. For these people, the tool was the law, and as strange as it might seem to us, it worked for them. It provided a framework for their lives, a way to handle the unexpected and the unwanted. You think about the bill for the lawyer's services. It was often paid in kind, grain, wine, or wool. You find a gentle irony in the idea of the lawyer being paid in the very grain the rats were trying to eat. It is a perfect circle of medieval life. The rats eat the grain. The lawyer defends the rats. The village pays the lawyer with the remaining grain, and the world continues to turn. It is a slow, steady cycle, like the turning of a water wheel in a quiet stream. You feel yourself drifting closer to sleep, the images of rats and robes and golden grain blending together in your mind. The lawyer finally sits down, looking exhausted but satisfied. He wipes his brow with a silk handkerchief and takes a slow sip of water from a ceramic mug. The judge leans back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, as if he is consulting the heavens for a decision. The room is silent now, a deep and profound silence that feels like a heavy blanket. You can hear the distant sound of a bird chirping outside, a bright and cheerful sound that reminds you that life goes on, regardless of what happens in this room. You feel a sense of peace, a feeling that everything is as it should be. The trial is adjourned for the day, and the people in the room begin to slowly pack up their belongings. They move with a quiet respect, their voices hushed as they filter out into the afternoon sun. You stay in your seat for a few moments longer, savoring the stillness and the lingering sense of history. You have seen a lawyer defend a rat, and you have seen a community use the law to find balance. It has been a long and fascinating day, full of strange details and quiet moments of beauty. You are ready for the next part of the journey, but for now, you are content to just sit and breathe. You stand up and stretch, feeling the blood return to your legs. You walk toward the door, passing the lawyer's table. You see a stray piece of parchment with a drawing of a rat in the margin. It is a simple sketch, but it captures the essence of the creature, the long tail, the sharp nose, the alert ears. You wonder if the lawyer drew it while he was listening to the charges. It is a human touch, a reminder that behind the formal language and the heavy robes, there are real people with real feelings. You step out into the sunlight and find that the village is bathed in a warm orange glow. The day is ending, and the world is preparing for rest. You walk slowly through the village, the mud now dry and dusty under your feet. You see the barns where the rats live, their dark wooden walls glowing in the sunset. You feel a new sense of respect for the creatures. They are part of this world too, with their own rights and their own place in the law. You think about the lawyer and the judge, and the way they work together to find a solution. It is a story of cooperation and logic, a story that feels remarkably relevant even today. You reach the edge of the village and look out over the fields, the long shadows of the trees, reaching toward you like the fingers of the past. The air is cooling down, and you pull your cloak tighter around you. You feel a sense of deep satisfaction, as if you have learned something important about the world. You have seen how the law can be a bridge between the human and the animal, between the known and the unknown. You have seen the beauty of a well-argued case and the peace of a quiet courtroom. You are ready to close your eyes and let the images of the day drift away, replaced by the soft, dark velvet of sleep. The story of the rats and their lawyer will stay with you, a quiet reminder of the strangeness and the wonder of history. As you walk toward your room for the night, you hear the soft rustle of something moving in the dry leaves beside the path. You don't look down. You just smile, knowing that whoever it is, they have the best legal representation in the world. You enter the inn and find a fire crackling in the hearth, its orange light dancing on the walls. You sit down in a comfortable chair and let the warmth soak into your bones. The world is quiet, the village is sleeping, and the law is at rest. You close your eyes and let the sounds of the fire carry you away, your mind full of golden grain and the soft, rhythmic tapping of little feet in the dark. The golden light of mid-morning spills across the rolling vineyards like honey, warming the back of your neck as you walk along a dusty path. You can feel the fine, powdery soil shifting beneath your boots, and the air is filled with the low, steady vibration of 1,000 tiny wings. It is a peaceful sound, the kind of white noise that makes you want to lie down in the tall grass and watch the clouds drift by. But for the farmers of this valley, that sound is a warning of economic ruin. You are heading toward a large, stone cathedral that sits like a silent guardian on the edge of the cultivated lands. Its gray towers reach toward the sky, and you notice how the light catches the intricate carvings of saints and gargoyles that line the roof. The gargoyles look down at the fields with stony indifference, their mouths frozen in permanent snarls, unaware that today the focus of the law has shifted from the sins of men to the appetites of insects. You step into the cool shade of the cathedral's great porch, the temperature dropping instantly and making the skin on your arms prickle. The scent here is a mix of ancient dust, cold incense, and the green, vegetal smell of the nearby fields. You find a spot to lean against a heavy pillar, the stone feeling solid and reassuringly old against your shoulder. Today, the ecclesiastical court is in session to address a plague of weevils that have been systematically dismantling the local grape harvest. It seems like a strange thing to take to a bishop, but in this world, everything is connected through a divine hierarchy. If the secular judge handles the pig who breaks a fence, the church handles the swarms that descend like a blanket over the earth. You imagine the bishop sitting in his high chair, looking down at a small wooden box containing 3 or 4 bewildered beetles, which serve as representatives for their entire species. The interior of the cathedral is a forest of stone. Tall, slender columns rise up into the darkness of the vaulted ceiling, and the light from the stained glass windows paints long ribbons of ruby and sapphire across the floor. You watch as a group of villagers enters, their movements slow and heavy with the exhaustion of the harvest season. They cross themselves with practiced, rhythmic motions and take their seats on the dark oak pews. You can hear the soft creak of the wood as they settle in, a sound that feels like a sigh. There is no anger in their faces, only a quiet, wary hope. They have tried everything to stop the beetles, smoke, prayers, even manual labor. And now they are turning to the law of the church as a last resort. It is a mainstream historical fact that these ecclesiastical trials were a standard response to natural disasters. When the physical world became unmanageable, the people looked to the spiritual legal system to restore balance. The bishop arrives, preceded by a young acolyte carrying a heavy silver cross. The bishop is an imposing figure in his white and gold vestments, his movements slow and deliberate, as if every step is a part of a sacred dance. He takes his seat at the front of the nave, and the trial begins. It is a quirky tidbit of history that the legal process for insects often involved serving a formal summons at the edge of the fields. A court official would walk out to the infested area and read the charges aloud to the ground, giving the insects 3 days to appoint a legal representative or face the consequences. You find a gentle humor in the image of a man in a black robe shouting at a patch of dirt while the beetles continue to munch on leaves, completely oblivious to their impending legal doom. It is a moment of human stubbornness that you find quite endearing. The defense lawyer for the insects is the same man you saw at the rat trial, looking slightly more disheveled today. He has a smudge of ink on his nose and his eyes are heavy, perhaps from a late night spent researching the theological status of invertebrates. He stands before the bishop and begins his argument with a soft, melodic voice that echoes through the vast space of the cathedral. He argues that the weevils are God's little creatures, and that they are merely fulfilling the role assigned to them in the Garden of Eden. He suggests that if they are eating the grapes, it is because God intended for them to be fed, and that the villagers are being selfish by denying them their natural sustenance. It is a bold move, effectively putting the villagers on trial for their lack of charity toward nature. You find yourself nodding along to the rhythm of his words, his logic as smooth and cooling as the stone beneath your hand. Historians still argue whether these trials were a form of psychological comfort for the peasants, or if the clergy truly believed they could legally banish a swarm of locusts. As you watch the bishop listen with a look of intense gravity, it feels less like a performance and more like a sincere attempt to mediate between the human and the wild. The bishop doesn't look like he thinks this is a waste of time. He looks like a man carrying the weight of the entire harvest on his shoulders. He asks the lawyer if the insects would be willing to move to a reserved area of common land if the church provided a formal blessing for their new home. This was a common solution in such trials, offering the pests a legal sanctuary where they could exist without bothering the human crops. It is a remarkably civilized way to handle a pest problem, a legal compromise with the natural world. The atmosphere in the cathedral is incredibly cozy, despite its vastness. The thick walls keep the heat of the sun at bay, and the silence is punctuated only by the distant cooing of pigeons in the rafters and the soft, rhythmic chanting of the liturgy coming from a side chapel. You feel your breathing slowing down, matching the slow pace of the legal proceedings. You think back to the pig in her little jacket and the rats in their barns, and you realize that this is all part of the same tapestry. The medieval mind saw the world as a grand, orderly house, and every creature had its own room. When a creature wandered into the wrong room, the law was there to guide it back. It is a comforting way to view the universe, a world where nothing is truly random and everything can be reasoned with, even a beetle. You notice a small boy sitting in the pew ahead of you, his head lolling to the side as he drifts off to sleep. His father puts a protective arm around him, and the sight makes you feel a wave of warmth. This is the real purpose of the trial: to give these people a sense of peace, to let them feel that someone is looking out for them. The legal arguments are like a soft blanket being tucked around the village. You watch the light shift as a cloud passes over the sun, the colors on the floor fading for a moment before blooming back into life with even greater intensity. The dust motes dance in the air, swirling around the bishop's head like a tiny, silent swarm of their own. You feel a deep sense of relaxation, as if the cathedral itself is breathing with you. The lawyer for the insects is now citing ancient texts to prove that insects have a right to exist even if they are inconvenient. He talks about the beauty of the natural order and the danger of human pride. He is a good man, you think, to care so much for the rights of things that cannot even see him. You wonder if he ever goes home and finds a beetle in his kitchen and has to decide whether to step on it or serve it with a lawsuit. You suspect he probably just lets it out the window with a polite nod. There is a certain kindness in this era that often gets overlooked in favor of stories of mud and plague. These trials are an act of extreme empathy, an attempt to extend the protections of civilization to the very things that threaten it. The bishop leans forward, his voice a low, resonant hum that vibrates in the air. He begins to pronounce the sentence of the court. He declares that the weevils have 3 days to vacate the vineyards and move to the designated wasteland on the other side of the ridge. If they do not comply, they will be formally cursed and excommunicated from the grace of the earth. He raises his hand in a slow, sweeping gesture, as if he is physically pushing the swarm away. You feel a shiver of awe at the power of the moment. To the people in this room, this is not just words. This is a command to the universe. They believe that the very air will become hostile to the beetles if they stay. It is a moment of profound faith and legal certainty combined into one. As the bishop finishes, the bells in the towers begin to ring. They are large, heavy bells that make a deep, bronze sound that shakes the very floor beneath your feet. It is a slow, rhythmic tolling that signals the end of the day's legal business. You watch as the villagers stand up, their faces looking lighter and more at peace. They file out of the cathedral in a quiet, orderly line, their boots making a soft, communal sound on the stone. You follow them out into the bright afternoon sun, the heat feeling like a warm embrace after the chill of the interior. The world feels different now, as if the landscape has been reset. You look out toward the vineyards and imagine the beetles receiving the news, perhaps feeling a sudden urge to crawl toward the ridge. You walk back toward the village, the long shadows of the trees reaching out across the path. You pass a small stream where the water makes a gentle, bubbling sound as it flows over smooth, dark rocks. You think about the lawyer and the bishop and the small box of beetles, and you smile to yourself. It is a quirky, wonderful history that we share. You realize that you probably believe the Middle Ages were a time of darkness, but today you have seen a world of light and logic and strange, beautiful compassion. The mud and the cold are still there, but so is the desire for justice and the belief that even the smallest life matters. You feel a sense of connection to the earth and its many inhabitants, from the pig to the beetle to the tired farmer. You notice a single beetle crossing the path in front of you. its iridescent shell glowing like a jewel in the sunset. You pause and wait for it to pass, giving it the respect it deserves as a legal entity. It moves slowly, its tiny legs working with a determined rhythm. You wonder if it is one of the defendants, or perhaps a messenger heading to the vineyards with news of the court's decision. You let out a quiet sigh of contentment, the air cooling as the sun dips below the horizon. The sky is turning a deep, dusty purple, and the first few stars are beginning to peek through the veil of the atmosphere. It is a time for rest, for the humans and the insects alike. The sound of the village is changing as evening approaches. You hear the lowing of cattle and the distant, rhythmic chopping of wood for the night's fires. The smell of cooking, onions, herbs, and slow roasted grain begins to drift on the breeze. You think back to the crocodile, dung sunscreen mentioned in another story, and feel grateful for the simple, honest smells of this valley. You feel a deep, satisfying tiredness in your bones, the kind that comes from a day spent observing the slow, steady progress of the world. You are ready to find a warm hearth and a soft bed, to let the stories of the day settle into your mind like silt at the bottom of a clear pond. As you reach the edge of the village, you look back at the cathedral one last time. Its silhouette is dark against the fading sky, a symbol of the order and the mystery that define this era. You think about the legal scrolls being tucked away into their wooden chests, their ink drying in the cool night air. Those scrolls contain the hopes and fears of an entire community, preserved in the elegant, looping script of the clerks. They are the evidence that we have always tried to be fair, even when we were confused. They are the proof that the law is a living thing, as much a part of the landscape as the trees and the vines. You find your way to the inn, the door opening with a soft, familiar creak. The warmth inside is a tangible thing, wrapping around you like a heavy wool coat. You take a seat by the fire, watching the flames dance and flicker in the hearth. The sound of the fire is a gentle, crackling whisper that makes your eyelids feel impossibly heavy. You are drifting now, the images of the day blending together in a soft, golden blur. The vineyards, the beetles, the bishop's golden robes, they all float in the quiet space of your mind. You feel safe and grounded, a traveler who has found a momentary home in the heart of history. You remember the lex talionis, from the pig's trial and the natural rights, from the rat's defense, and you see how they all lead to this moment. The church's curse is not an act of hate, but an act of boundary setting. It is a way to say where the human world ends and the wild world begins. And in that boundary, there is a space for peace. You close your eyes, the warmth of the fire soaking into your skin. You can still hear the faint, distant ringing of the cathedral bells in your mind, a slow and steady pulse that matches the beating of your heart. You are at rest now, and the world is at rest with you. The story of the insects and the church is a story of faith in the power of the word. It is a reminder that we can speak to the world, and that sometimes the world listens. Whether the beetles moved because of the blessing or because of a change in the wind doesn't really matter. What matters is that the people believed they could find a solution through reason and ritual. They chose the law over the sword, and in doing so, they created a moment of profound beauty in a harsh and difficult time. You take a deep, slow breath. the scent of the wood smoke filling your lungs. You are sinking deeper into the chair, your muscles loose and heavy. You think about the lawyer one last time, wondering if he is sleeping as soundly as you are about to. He fought a good fight for his tiny clients, and he deserves his rest. You imagine him dreaming of a world where every creature has a place and every problem has a legal solution. It is a good dream to have. You let the last thoughts of the day slip away, leaving only the warmth and the quiet and the steady rhythm of the night. You are ready to drift into the velvet darkness, the story of the medieval animal trials guiding you toward a deep and peaceful sleep. The world is in good hands, and the law is watching over even the smallest of us as we dream. The fire in the hearth pops softly, a final punctuation mark on the day's journey. You don't even flinch. You are already too far gone into the world of shadows and light. You are a part of the history now, a silent witness to the strange and wonderful ways we have tried to make sense of our lives. The mud of the path, the dust of the cathedral, the gold of the bishop's robes. They are all part of you now. You sleep with the certainty that tomorrow will bring new stories, new mysteries, and new wonders. But for now, there is only the silence, the warmth, and the long, slow exhale of the world at rest. The air in Basel feels different from the humid warmth of the French vineyards you visited yesterday. Here, in the year 1474, the atmosphere is sharp and brittle, carrying the icy scent of the nearby Swiss Alps. You pull your heavy wool cloak tighter around your frame, feeling the coarse texture of the fabric against your chin. The cobblestones beneath your feet are dusted with a light layer of frost that catches the early morning light, shimmering like tiny diamonds in the cracks of the path. You walk slowly, your breath forming soft, white clouds that drift away into the still air. The city is waking up with a quiet, measured rhythm. You hear the rhythmic scraping of a wooden shovel on a nearby doorstep and the distant, muffled sound of a church bell calling the faithful to prayer. Everything here feels solid and serious, a world built of heavy stone and dark, polished wood. You are making your way toward the city square, where a crowd has already begun to gather in front of the local courthouse. This building is a masterpiece of late Gothic architecture, with its red sandstone walls and steep, tiled roof. You notice the way the morning sun hits the ornate carvings around the windows, making the stone look as though it is glowing from within. You find a spot to stand near a large stone fountain, the water within it moving with a slow, sluggish grace as if it too is reluctant to face the morning chill. You feel a sense of quiet anticipation in the air. People are not shouting or pushing. They are speaking in low, serious tones, their voices blending into a steady hum that is surprisingly soothing. They are here to witness a trial that even by the standards of the 15th century is considered highly unusual. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere is heavy with the scent of old wood and beeswax. You find a seat on a long, narrow bench made of dark oak, its surface worn smooth by generations of townspeople. The room is dimly lit, the only light coming from the tall, narrow windows and a few thick tallow candles that flicker in the draught. You watch as a small cage is brought into the center of the room and placed on a sturdy wooden table. Inside the cage is the defendant, a bright, healthy-looking rooster. He has vibrant red feathers that seem to catch the candlelight, and his eyes are sharp and alert. He tilts his head to the side, watching the judges with a look of innocent confusion. You can't help but think that he probably wishes he had just stayed in his warm coop this morning instead of becoming the center of a legal storm. It is a quirky fact of history that this specific rooster was not accused of a crime of violence, but of a crime against nature itself. The charges are read aloud by a clerk with a voice like dry parchment. The rooster is accused of laying an egg. In the modern world, this would be seen as a biological curiosity, or perhaps a simple mistake of identity. But in 1386, it was a matter of grave spiritual concern. You listen as the clerk details the evidence, his voice rising and falling in a rhythmic drone that makes you feel increasingly sleepy. He explains that a rooster laying an egg is an omen of disaster, a sign that the natural order has been inverted by dark forces. There is a mainstream historical fact that, in this era, the line between science, law, and religion was almost non-existent. People believed that every event in the physical world had a spiritual meaning. An egg from a rooster was not just an egg. It was a potential vessel for a basilisk, a mythical serpent said to be hatched from such an egg by a toad. You lean back against the cool stone wall, letting the weight of your body settle into the bench. The lawyer for the city stands up to speak, his robes rustling softly against the floor. He argues that the rooster must be punished to prevent the birth of this monster and to cleanse the city of the unnatural act. You find yourself thinking about the logistics of this legal theory. If you think your local zoning laws are a headache, try explaining to a judge that your bird might accidentally summon a mythical dragon. It is a moment of historical absurdity that you find quite charming in its own strange way. The lawyer speaks with such passion and conviction that you almost start to believe in the basilisk yourself. His voice is a steady, comforting presence in the quiet room, a sound that you could easily drift off to. The defense lawyer, a man with a tired face and kind eyes, stands up to offer a rebuttal. He does not deny that the egg was found, but he argues that the rooster did not act out of malice. He suggests that the bird might be possessed by a confused spirit, or that the egg was simply a mistake of nature that should not be blamed on the creature itself. He asks for mercy, his voice low and persuasive. Historians still argue whether the community truly feared mythical monsters, or if these trials served as a psychological release during times of social anxiety. As you watch the people in the room, you see a mix of fear and genuine curiosity. They want to know that their world makes sense, and the trial provides a framework for that understanding. You watch the rooster again. He has decided to tuck his head under one wing, seemingly bored by the entire proceeding. There is a deep, rhythmic peace in his movements. He is not worried about basilisks or legal precedents. He is just a bird in a cage, waiting for the day to end. You feel a wave of empathy for him. It is a heavy burden to be a symbol of the end of the world, when you are just trying to find a few grains of corn. The judge, an older man with a long, gray beard, leans forward and studies the bird. He looks like a man who has seen everything, from simple thefts to complex disputes over land, but even he seems fascinated by the rooster. He taps a slow, steady beat on his desk with a heavy silver ring, the sound echoing through the quiet room like a heartbeat. The afternoon sun begins to shift, and a beam of light hits the rooster's cage. making his feathers glow like embers. You feel the warmth of the room increasing as more people filter in, their presence adding a soft, communal heat to the space. The scent of damp wool and wood smoke from the people's clothing fills the air, a familiar and grounding aroma. You find yourself focusing on the small details of the room, the way the dust motes dance in the light, the intricate patterns of the grain in the wood, and the soft, raspy sound of the clerk's quill as he records the testimony. These small, rhythmic details are like a series of gentle pulses, pulling you deeper into a state of relaxation. You are a silent observer in a world where the impossible is being debated with the utmost seriousness. You recall a quirky tidbit you once heard about this trial, that the egg itself was brought into court and examined as if it were a piece of evidence from a crime scene. I imagine the judge peering at the small, pale object through a magnifying glass, looking for signs of the serpent within. It is a level of dedication to the law that is both impressive and a little bit silly. The village must have had a very high standard for their breakfast if they were willing to go to court over a single suspicious egg. You find a quiet joy in these small moments of human eccentricity. They remind you that no matter how much the world changes, we have always been a little bit obsessed with the details of our lives. The trial continues for hours, the voices of the lawyers blending into a seamless stream of sound. You feel your eyelids growing heavy, the rhythmic cadence of the French and German words acting like a soft, invisible weight. You let your chin drop toward your chest, the wool of your cloak feeling soft and warm against your skin. The world outside the courthouse has faded away. There is no Basel, no 1474, no cold mountain air. There is only the quiet room, the golden light, and the peaceful, sleeping rooster. You are floating in a moment of pure history, a quiet bubble of time where the rules of logic are suspended in favor of the rules of the court. The judge finally stands up to deliver his verdict. His voice is a deep, resonant rumble that shakes you gently from your half-sleep. He speaks of the need for order and the danger of the unnatural. He declares that the rooster is guilty of the crime of laying an egg and sentences the bird to be burned at the stake, along with the egg, to ensure that no basilisk can ever be born. It is a harsh sentence, but he delivers it with a look of profound sadness. He is not a cruel man. He is a man of his time, doing what he believes is necessary to protect his city. You watch as the guards approach the cage, their movements slow and respectful. They lift the cage and carry the rooster out of the room, the bird letting out a single, soft cluck as he is moved. You follow the crowd back out into the square. The sun is now low in the sky, washing the red sandstone of the courthouse in a deep, bloody orange. The air has grown even colder, and you can feel the bite of the wind on your cheeks. A small fire has been prepared in the center of the square, its flames licking at the air with a hungry orange glow. The rooster is placed on the pyre, and as the smoke begins to rise, the crowd falls into a deep, respectful silence. There is no cheering, no celebration. It is a solemn ritual, an act of communal purification. You watch the smoke drift up toward the darkening sky, a thin gray ribbon that seems to carry the fears of the city away with it. As you stand there, you think about the mainstream historical fact that these animal executions were often conducted with the same formality as human ones. This was not a quick or hidden act. It was a public event, meant to be seen and understood by everyone. It was a way for the city to say that the law is absolute, even for a bird. You feel a sense of profound stillness as the fire burns down to glowing embers. The world feels a little safer to the people around you, a little more predictable. They believe they have prevented a catastrophe, and there is a visible relief in their posture. They begin to disperse, walking back to their homes in the fading light. You walk slowly away from the square, your boots making a quiet, lonely sound on the cobblestones. You think about the rooster and the egg and the lawyer who defended them both. You think about the basilisks that never were and the laws that tried to catch them anyway. It is a story of human imagination and human order, a story that feels both ancient and remarkably close. You realize that the history of the animal trials is a history of our own attempts to define what is natural and what is not. We are always trying to draw lines in the mud, to build walls against the unknown. Sometimes those walls are made of stone, and sometimes they are made of words. The light of the city is changing now. Windows are beginning to glow with the soft, yellow light of candles and hearth fires. You see the shadow of a cat running along a roofline, its movements fluid and silent. You wonder if the cat knows how lucky it is to not be a rooster in Basel. You find yourself smiling at the thought, a gentle, sleepy smile that warms your face. You reach the door of your inn and pause for a moment, looking back at the dark silhouette of the courthouse. It looks like a giant, sleeping beast in the twilight, a guardian of the laws that keep the darkness at bay. You feel a deep sense of peace, a feeling that you have witnessed something important, even if it was just the trial of a confused bird. Inside the inn, the air is thick with the smell of roasting meat and spiced ale. You find a quiet corner by the fire and sit down, feeling the heat seep into your cold bones. The crackle of the logs is a soothing, rhythmic sound that matches the pace of your own thoughts. You close your eyes and let the images of the day drift away. The red feathers of the rooster, the gray beard of the judge, the orange glow of the fire, they all become part of a soft, swirling dream. You feel safe and warm, a traveler who has found a moment of rest in the long journey through history. You think about the scholarly debate phrase again, wondering if the people of Basel were truly afraid, or if they were just playing a part in a grand legal play. Perhaps it doesn't matter. What matters is the way they came together to solve a problem, however strange that problem might seem to us. They used the tools they had, the law, the church, and the community, to find a way through the darkness. And in doing so, they left us a story that is as beautiful as it is bizarre. You take a slow, deep breath, the warmth of the fire making your muscles feel like they are melting into the chair. The story of the rooster of Basel is a reminder that the world is full of mystery, and that we are always searching for ways to understand it. We use our logic and our laws to try and capture the wind, and even when we fail, there is a certain dignity in the attempt. You feel a sense of connection to those people in the courthouse, to their seriousness and their sincerity. We are all just trying to make sense of the eggs that life drops in our path. You let out a long, quiet sigh, the last of the day's tension leaving your body. You are ready to sleep, to let the stories of the past guide you into a deep and peaceful rest. As you drift off, you hear the distant, muffled sound of the church bell ringing one last time. It is a slow, steady pulse that sounds like a heartbeat in the quiet of the night. You are at peace now, and the city of Basel is at peace with you. The fire in the hearth pops softly, a final, gentle sound before you succumb to the velvet darkness of sleep. The laws are silent, the judges are home, and the world is waiting for tomorrow. You sleep with the knowledge that the history of the world is a long and winding path, and you are exactly where you need to be. Sweet dreams of red feathers and golden light, and the quiet, steady rhythm of a world that is always trying to be fair. The wood in the fireplace settles with a soft, sliding sound, and the shadows on the wall dance one last time before the light fades. You are deep in the arms of sleep now, your breathing slow and regular. The story of the rooster has become a part of your own history, a quiet, colorful thread in the tapestry of your mind. You are a silent witness to the wonders of the past, and those wonders will stay with you long after the fire has gone out. You are safe, you are warm, and the story is complete for now. Sleep well, and let the quiet whispers of history carry you into the morning. The crisp, alpine air of Basel eventually fades into the memory of your journey as you travel further north, following the winding curves of a river that lead you toward a much larger, denser city. You find yourself standing before massive iron-studded gates as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting a long, deep purple shadow over the landscape. The atmosphere here is a thick stew of urban life. The scent of roasting fat, the earthy aroma of horses, and the sharp, metallic tang of 100 blacksmiths' fires cooling for the evening. You feel the vibration of the city through the soles of your boots, a low and constant hum of activity that never truly sleeps. Your wool cloak, now a bit frayed at the edges from weeks of travel, feels heavy and comforting as the evening chill settles in. You watch as a large wooden cart, its wheels groaning under the weight of stone blocks, rolls past you into the city, its rhythmic creaking sounding like a slow, tired heartbeat. You step onto the narrow cobblestone streets, where the buildings lean toward one another, as if sharing secrets across the lane. The light is dim here, filtered through layers of smoke and the encroaching twilight. You notice a small, scruffy dog sitting near the corner of a tavern, its ears pricked and its eyes following the movement of every passerby. It wears a thick leather collar with a small brass bell that makes a soft, melodic tinkling sound every time the creature tilts its head. This is not just a pet in this city. This dog is a subject of the law, governed by a complex set of statutes that define exactly where it can go and how it must behave. You find a certain humor in the thought of a dog having a legal resume, perhaps listing its previous experience in guarding grain or its lack of a criminal record regarding the local butcher's sausages. It is a quirky fact of history that some medieval cities actually employed a dog beetle, an official whose entire job was to manage the presence of canines in public spaces, especially in churches. You move deeper into the heart of the city, your footsteps making a soft, rhythmic sound against the damp stones. The air is cooler here, trapped between the high walls of the timber-framed houses. You see the faint glow of lanterns being lit in the windows above, their yellow light spilling out like gold onto the dark street. You are heading toward a secondary court building, a place where the smaller but equally serious matters of urban life are settled. Today, the focus is on the great dog lawsuits that have been stirring up the local neighborhood. In the dense environment of a medieval city, a dog is not just an animal. It is a potential liability, a guardian of property, and sometimes a participant in a crime. You reach the courthouse, a sturdy building of gray stone and dark oak, its door standing open to invite the evening air. Inside, the room is filled with a soft, amber light from several large iron candelabras. The scent is a mix of wet dog, beeswax, and the dry, papery smell of the legal scrolls piled on the clerk's table. You find a seat on a low wooden stool, feeling the rough texture of the wood beneath your hands. The room is quiet, the only sound being the soft rustle of clothing as people shift in their seats. You watch as a man enters, leading a large, shaggy greyhound on a leather leash. The dog moves with a regal, effortless grace, its claws making a series of sharp, rhythmic clicks on the stone floor. It sits down beside its owner with an air of immense self-importance, as if it knows that the next hour will be entirely about its own actions. You find it amusing to imagine the dog's inner monologue, perhaps wondering if the judge has any spare ribs hidden beneath his heavy robes. The mainstream historical fact about these urban trials is that dogs were often treated as a unique category of property that carried personal responsibility. If a dog bit a person or caused damage to a shop, the law had to decide if the owner was negligent or if the animal had acted with its own malicious intent. You listen as the prosecutor, a man with a sharp nose and even sharper eyes, begins to read the charges. The greyhound is accused of stealing a high-quality leg of lamb from a prominent merchant's stall. This wasn't just a matter of a hungry dog. It was a violation of the commercial peace of the marketplace. The law in this city takes its commerce very seriously. If you think your modern homeowners association is strict about pets, imagine facing a judge because your dog has an expensive taste in meat and a talent for shoplifting. The lawyer for the dog's owner stands up to offer a defense. He is an older man with a voice that sounds like honey poured over gravel, slow and soothing. He argues that the dog was not properly supervised because the merchant's stall was encroaching on the public walkway, effectively trapping the poor animal with the irresistible scent of lamb. He suggests that the merchant is actually at fault for tempting a creature of nature with such an accessible prize. Historians still argue whether the presence of dogs in court was a literal interpretation of the law or a way to highlight the owner's negligence through a public performance. As you watch the judge, you see him stroke his beard, his eyes fixed on the greyhound. The dog, meanwhile, has decided to yawn, a long and dramatic display that ends with a soft, high-pitched squeak. It is a moment of pure, unbothered innocence in the middle of a legal battle. You feel the warmth of the room pressing against you, the heat from the candles making your eyelids feel heavy and warm. The rhythm of the lawyer's speech is like the swaying of a boat on a calm lake, a steady back and forth that pulls you toward a state of deep relaxation. You watch the shadows of the people in the room, dancing on the stone walls, their shapes shifting and growing as the candles burn lower. The city outside feels a world away, its noise muffled by the thick walls of the courthouse. You are safe here, a silent witness to a world where even a dog's appetite is a matter for the highest authorities. You think back to the pig in its jacket and the rooster in its cage, and you see the same thread of human order being woven here. We want the world to be fair, even when the offender doesn't understand the concept of a fair share. You notice a small detail that makes you smile. The greyhound has a small, decorative collar made of green leather with tiny silver studs. It looks like something a modern luxury brand might sell for a small fortune. In the 15th century, a dog's collar was often a sign of its owner's status. A fancy collar meant the dog belonged to someone important, which might even give it a bit of extra protection in the eyes of the law. It is a quirky tidbit of history that some dogs were even granted letters of protection if they belonged to the nobility, making them legally untouchable by the local dog catchers. You imagine this greyhound, with its green collar and its silver studs, walking through the city like a minor celebrity, completely unaware of the legal drama it has caused. The trial continues with the merchant testifying about the loss of his lamb. He speaks with a lot of hand gestures, his voice rising and falling as he describes the vicious way the dog snatched the meat and disappeared into the crowd. He wants compensation, not just for the meat, but for the emotional distress of being outsmarted by a canine. You find yourself leaning toward the dog's side. After all, a leg of lamb left out in the open is practically an invitation. The judge seems to agree, or at least he seems bored by the merchant's exaggerations. He taps his fingers on the desk, a soft and rhythmic sound that matches the ticking of a clock you can't see. You feel your breathing slowing down, each breath in and out a gentle wave that carries you deeper into the story. You think about the dog whippers mentioned earlier and how their role was both practical and symbolic. They kept the peace in the sacred spaces of the church, but they also represented the human desire to control the wilder parts of our lives. A dog in a church was a distraction from the spiritual, just as a dog in the market was a distraction from the commercial. The law was the tool used to manage these distractions. You find a deep sense of peace in this realization. The world has always been a little bit messy, and we have always used the same methods to try and clean it up. We talk, we argue, we write things down on parchment, and we try to find a middle ground. It is a very human way to live, and there is a comfort in its consistency. The light in the courtroom is changing as the evening progresses. The shadows are longer now, stretching across the floor like the fingers of a giant. The air is cooler, but you stay warm in your cloak, the wool feeling like a soft cocoon. You watch a small spider spinning a web in the corner of the window frame, its movements slow and methodical. It too is a builder of order, creating a structure to catch what it needs to survive. You feel a sense of kinship with the spider, the dog, and the people in the room. We are all just trying to navigate our own environments, using the rules we understand. The law of the city is just a more complicated version of the spider's web. The lawyer for the owner makes a final, brilliant point. He argues that since the dog cannot testify, the court must rely on its character. He brings forward a local baker who says the greyhound often waits outside his shop and never once tried to steal a loaf of bread. This character witness is taken very seriously by the judge. It shows that the dog is generally a law-abiding citizen of the city. You find the idea of a dog having a reputation for honesty quite wonderful. It adds a layer of personality to the animal. that makes it feel like a true part of the community. You imagine the dog and the baker having a quiet understanding, a silent contract of trust that has lasted for years. The judge finally delivers his verdict. He orders the owner to pay for half the cost of the lamb, citing the merchant's own negligence in leaving it so close to the path. The dog is given a formal warning, which is recorded in the city's legal books. It is a compromise that leaves everyone slightly unsatisfied, but allows the peace of the neighborhood to be restored. You watch as the owner leads the greyhound out of the room, the dog's tail wagging slowly as it steps back into the cool night air. The merchant grumbles a bit, but eventually packs up his things and follows them out. The room is quiet once again, the only sound being the soft hiss of the candles as they burn down to their bases. You stay on your stool for a few minutes, savoring the stillness of the empty courtroom. You feel a sense of profound relaxation, as if the weight of the day's journey has finally been lifted from your shoulders. The history of the animal trials is not just a collection of odd stories, it is a map of the human heart. It shows us how much we care about justice, even in the smallest matters. It shows us our capacity for empathy and our need for structure. You realize that you probably believe these trials were just a sign of a less enlightened time. But today, you have seen that they were actually a sign of a society that was deeply committed to the idea of fairness for everyone, even the four-legged ones. You stand up and walk toward the door, your movements slow and deliberate. You feel the coolness of the night air on your face, a refreshing contrast to the warmth of the interior. The city is quieter now, the lights in the windows fading as people go to bed. You walk back toward your inn, the green leather collar of the greyhound still vivid in your mind. You think about the lawyer and the judge and the baker, and the way they all work together to find a solution. It is a story of urban harmony, a quiet reminder that we can always find a way to live together if we follow the rules we have made for ourselves. As you walk, you see the scruffy dog from earlier, still sitting on its corner. It watches you pass with a look of quiet intelligence. You wonder if it knows that its cousin was just in court, defending its reputation. Probably not. It is likely just waiting for its own owner to come home and provide a warm spot by the fire. You feel a wave of sleepy contentment wash over you. The world is at rest, and you are at rest with it. You reach the inn and find the door unlatched, the warmth of the hearth welcoming you back from the night. You take a seat by the fire and let the sounds of the dying embers carry you away, your mind full of green collars and silver studs and the soft, rhythmic clicking of claws on stone. You think about the mainstream historical fact that these laws eventually evolved into our modern pet ownership rules. We still have leash laws, we still have liability for bites, and we still have character witnesses for animals in some cases. The link between the 15th century and the 21st is much stronger than we often realize. We are still the same people, trying to live in the same world with the same companions. You feel a deep sense of connection to the past, a feeling that you are part of a long and beautiful tradition of legal care. The story of the dog lawsuits is a story of our own growth, our own attempt to be better neighbors to each other and to the animals we love. The fire pops softly, a final punctuation mark on the day's thoughts. You don't even open your eyes. you are already drifting into the soft, velvet darkness of sleep. The images of the day, the shaggy greyhound, the golden candlelight, the sharp grey stone, all blend together into a peaceful blur. You feel safe and warm, a traveler who has found a moment of perfect clarity in the middle of a busy city. The laws of the city are quiet now, the judges are dreaming, and the dogs are curled up in their favorite spots. You sleep with the knowledge that the world is a place of order and kindness, a world where even a stolen leg of lamb can lead to a moment of shared understanding. You take a slow, deep breath, the scent of wood smoke filling your lungs. You are sinking deeper into the soft chair, your muscles feeling like they are slowly dissolving into the cushions. The story of the urban dog trials is complete, and you are ready for the final part of your journey. But for now, there is only the silence, the warmth, and the long, slow exhale of a city at rest. You are a part of the history now, a silent witness to the beauty and the strangeness of our shared past. Sleep well, and let the quiet whispers of the cobblestones guide you into a deep and peaceful rest. The world is in good hands, and the law is watching over us all as we dream of a world that is always trying to be fair. The last of the candles in the inn flickers and dies, leaving only the soft, red glow of the embers. You are deep in the arms of sleep now, your breathing slow and regular. The story of the greyhound has become a part of your own memory, a quiet, elegant thread in the tapestry of your mind. You are a silent witness to the wonders of the past, and those wonders will stay with you long after the fire has gone out. You are safe, you are warm, and the city is at peace. Sweet dreams of green collars and silver light, and the quiet, steady rhythm of a world that knows how to care for its own. The air in the village square feels thinner now, as if the centuries themselves have begun to exhale, releasing the heavy, humid tension of the medieval world. You are standing on a familiar cobblestone path, but the stones under your boots feel different, flatter, more uniform, and less choked by the thick, dark mud of the previous eras. It is now the mid-18th century, and the world is undergoing a slow, quiet transformation. The deep, resonant tolling of the cathedral bells still echoes through the valley, but the sound is accompanied by the rhythmic, sharp clacking of a printing press from a nearby shop. The scent of wood smoke is still present, but it is joined by the crisp, clean smell of freshly pressed paper and the bitter tang of industrial ink. You pull your cloak closer, noting that the wool is finer now, the weave more precise, a reflection of a world that is becoming obsessed with measurement, logic, and the mechanical pulse of progress. You look around at the village you have come to know. The houses are still made of stone and timber, but the windows are larger, letting in a flood of cool, rational light that seems to chase away the shadows where basilisks and demons once lurked. The gargoyles on the church roof still snarl, but they look less like guardians of a moral universe and more like curious relics of a fading imagination. You feel a sense of gentle melancholy as you realize that the era of the animal trials is drawing to a close. The great legal theater that brought pigs in jackets and roosters in cages before the bench is being replaced by a more streamlined, bureaucratic form of justice. The law is no longer a bridge between the human soul and the natural world. It is becoming a tool for managing property and maintaining public health. You begin to walk toward the outskirts of the town. where the vineyards still stretch toward the horizon. You remember the beetles that were given a legal sanctuary and the lawyer who argued for their right to exist as God's creatures. Today, if a swarm of insects descended on the grapes, the villagers wouldn't head to the bishop for a formal curse. They would consult a scientific text on entomology or reach for a new chemical compound. The mainstream historical fact is that the Enlightenment shifted the legal focus from moral agency to biological capacity. Philosophers like René Descartes had begun to argue that animals were essentially complex machines, lacking the reason, or soul, required to be held legally accountable for their actions. This shift in thinking effectively evicted animals from the courtroom, moving them from the category of defendant to the category of property. Historians still argue whether the decline of these trials was a sign of increasing human empathy or simply a move toward more efficient bureaucratic management of property. You find yourself pondering this as you sit on a low stone wall, watching a farmer lead a horse through a gate. The horse moves with a steady, rhythmic gait, its hooves making a soft, predictable sound on the dry earth. In the old world, if that horse had kicked its master, it might have faced a trial for its life, with a lawyer assigned to explain its motives. In this newer world, the horse is simply an asset. If it is broken, it is repaired or replaced. There is a certain coldness in this new logic, a loss of the strange, beautiful recognition that animals were once seen as fellow subjects in the eyes of the law. You feel a wave of sleepiness as you watch the horse's tail, swishing lazily in the afternoon sun. The movement is repetitive as the ticking of a pocket watch. You recall a quirky tidbit from the very end of this era, a trial that took place in 1750 in the village of Vanves, near Paris. A sheet donkey was accused of a crime that usually carried a death sentence. However, in a final, flickering moment of the old legal compassion, the local priest and several villagers came forward to provide a character reference for the animal. They testified that she was a virtuous, well-behaved creature who had always been a good Catholic in her behavior. Because of this testimony, the donkey was acquitted, while her human co-defendant was not. It is a lingering ghost of the medieval mind, a moment where the animal's personality still mattered more than its status as an object. You find a quiet joy in that story, a final reminder that the world was once a place where a donkey could be seen as having a good heart. The light of the afternoon is a pale, buttery gold, casting long, soft shadows across the landscape. You feel the warmth of the sun on your back, a gentle touch that makes your muscles feel loose and heavy. The world is becoming quieter, the frantic energy of the marketplace replaced by the steady, organized hum of a society that thinks it has everything figured out. You think back to the greyhound in its green leather collar and the way the urban courts treated it with such formal dignity. Now, the city laws are more concerned with sanitation and taxes than with the moral character of a shoplifting dog. The mystery is being drained out of the legal system, replaced by the dry, precise language of the modern code. You find yourself missing the chaos of the old courtroom, the smell of the tallow candles, and the sight of a sow in a waistcoat. The transition was not sudden. It happened in fits and starts, with some regions clinging to the old ways long after the cities had moved on. You imagine the old judges, their eyes dimming as they read the new legal treaties that told them they could no longer put a rat on trial. They must have felt a sense of loss, a feeling that the world was becoming a less meaningful place. To them, the law was a way to talk to the universe, to demand order from the wilderness. Now, the wilderness was just something to be mapped and exploited. You watch a hawk circling high above in the blue sky, its wings barely moving as it rides the thermal currents. It is a creature of the wild, and in this new era, it is finally free from the threat of a lawsuit. It exists outside the law, for better or worse. You decide to walk back toward the town hall, curious to see how the space has changed. The building is the same, but the atmosphere inside is different. The rushes on the floor have been replaced by polished wood that reflects the light from the large windows. The scent of wet dog and wood smoke has been replaced by the smell of lemon oil and old books. The clerk is still there, his quill scratching against the parchment, but he is recording deeds and tax rolls rather than the crimes of roosters. The sound is still rhythmic and soothing, a steady pulse that anchors you to the moment. You take a seat on a bench, feeling the cool, smooth surface under your hands. The room is quiet, a peaceful sanctuary from the changing world outside. You think about the lex talionis, the law of retaliation that governed the early trials. It was a harsh system, but it was a system that acknowledged the impact of an animal's actions on the community. It gave the victims a sense of closure and the community a sense of restored balance. In the modern era, that balance is sought through insurance claims and lawsuits against owners. The animal itself has been removed from the equation. You find yourself wondering if we lost something important when we stopped talking to the animals through the law. Perhaps we lost a bit of our own humanity when we stopped seeing them as moral participants in our lives. You let out a long, quiet sigh, the sound disappearing into the vast, empty space of the courtroom. The shadows of the window frames are crawling across the floor, measuring the passage of the day with agonizing slowness. You feel a deep, satisfying tiredness in your limbs, the kind that comes from a long journey through the corridors of time. You have seen the rise and fall of a truly unique human invention, a legal system that tried to encompass the entire living world. From the muddy gates of Falaise to the frozen squares of Basel, you have witnessed the strange, beautiful, and often absurd ways that we have tried to make sense of our place in nature. You have felt the cold of the courtroom and the warmth of the hearth, the scratch of the wool and the smoothness of the stone. As the sun begins to set, the room is bathed in a deep, glowing orange. The dust motes dance in the light, their movements as graceful as the flight of the beetles in the vineyard. You feel a sense of completion, as if the story has finally reached its natural conclusion. The law has moved on, the animals have returned to the fields and the forests, and the courtroom is silent. But the memory of those trials remains, tucked away in the dusty archives and the quiet corners of history. They are a reminder of a time when we were less certain of our superiority, a time when we were willing to listen to the silence of a pig or the cluck of a rooster before delivering justice. You stand up slowly, your boots making a soft, muted sound on the polished floor. You walk toward the door, passing the judge's bench. It is empty now, the wood glowing in the twilight. You imagine the ghosts of the old lawyers still arguing their cases in the shadows, their voices a faint whisper in the wind. They are defending the rats, the weevils, and the stray dogs of a world that no longer exists. You smile to yourself, a gentle, sleepy smile that warms your face. You step out of the town hall and into the cool evening air, the first stars beginning to twinkle overhead. The world is at peace, and so are you. You walk toward the edge of the village, the landscape fading into a soft, velvety gray. The distant sounds of the town, the clatter of a cart, the bark of a dog, the laughter of a child, are muffled and far away. You feel a deep sense of connection to the people who walked these paths before you, the ones who believed in the power of the law to heal the world. They were not so different from us, with their fears and their hopes and their desire for order. They just had a broader definition of who belonged in the conversation. You reach a small bridge over a quiet stream and pause to listen to the water bubbling over the rocks. It is a timeless sound, a reminder that while laws and societies change, the natural world remains. The story of the animal trials is a story of our own imagination, a reflection of our need to find meaning in the world around us. We are the only creatures who build such elaborate structures of thought, who try to capture the wildness of life in the pages of a book. And even when those structures crumble and change, the intent behind them remains beautiful. We want to be fair. We want to be just. We want to understand. You take a slow, deep breath, the crisp air filling your lungs and clearing your mind. You are ready for the final rest, the end of the long day's journey. The history of the animal trials has been a long and winding road, but it has led you here, to this moment of quiet reflection and peaceful stillness. You look back at the village one last time, its lights beginning to glow like tiny embers in the darkness. You think about the pig, the rats, the beetles, the rooster, and the dog. They were all your companions on this journey, silent witnesses to the strangest parts of human history. You feel a sense of gratitude for their presence, for the way they helped you see the world through a different lens. They are part of you now, a collection of images and sensations that you will carry with you into your dreams. You turn away from the village and walk into the soft, dark embrace of the night, your footsteps light and easy on the path. The world is sleeping now, the laws are silent, and the animals are at rest. You are floating in a moment of pure, unadulterated peace, a quiet space where time has no meaning. The story is finished, the journey is complete, and you are exactly where you need to be. You feel safe, you feel warm, and you feel a deep, satisfying sense of belonging. The whispers of history are fading into the background, leaving only the steady, rhythmic beating of your own heart. You are ready to close your eyes and let the darkness carry you away, your mind full of golden light and the soft, beautiful mystery of the past. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, you hear the distant, muffled sound of a single bell ringing in the valley. It is a slow, steady pulse that sounds like a promise of a new day. But for now, there is only the night, the silence, and the long, slow exhale of the world at rest. You are a part of the history now, a silent witness to the beauty and the strangeness of our shared past. Sleep well, and let the quiet whispers of the centuries guide you into a deep and peaceful rest. The world is in good hands, and the law is watching over us all as we dream of a world that is always trying to be fair. The path beneath your feet is soft now, covered in a carpet of dry leaves that rustle gently as you walk. You are moving toward a place of perfect quiet, a place where the stories of the past become the dreams of the future. You feel a deep sense of peace wash over you, a feeling that everything is as it should be. The journey is over, and the rest is well earned. You close your eyes, the warmth of the evening air on your face, and let the last thoughts of the day slip away. You are safe, you are warm, and the story is complete. The world has grown very still now, and the stories of the pigs and the roosters, the lawyers and the judges, are beginning to fade into a soft, hazy blur. You can feel the weight of your body pressing into the mattress, the blankets wrapping around you like a warm, heavy cloud. Your breathing is slow and regular, a gentle tide that pulls you further away from the waking world with every exhale. The room is dark, save for the faint, silver light of the moon filtering through the curtains, casting a peaceful glow over everything you see. You are safe in your own time, in your own bed, protected by the modern laws and comforts that grew out of the strange traditions we explored tonight. Think of the silence of that old French courtroom, the golden light of the Swiss morning, and the cool, damp stones of the city streets. They are all just memories now, quiet echoes of a time that has long since passed. Let those images drift through your mind like autumn leaves on a slow, moving river. There is no more history to learn tonight, no more laws to ponder, and no more mud to walk through. There is only the softness of your pillow, the warmth of your room, and the quiet, steady rhythm of your heart. Your mind is clear, your body is relaxed, and the world outside is hushed and still. You are sinking deeper into the velvet darkness, the last of the day's tension melting away into nothingness. You are surrounded by peace, by warmth, and by the gentle, protective spirit of the stories we shared. Sleep is waiting for you just a few heartbeats away, a deep and dreamless rest that will restore your strength and quiet your soul. Let yourself go now. Drift away into the shadows and the light, sweet dreams of distant lands and quiet moments. You are home. You are safe. You are at rest.